Welcome to Paradise in the Pines, a podcast about the people, places, and stories that make this the home of American golf. Brought to you by the Pinehurst Southern Pines Aberdeen Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Paradise in the Pines. I'm Phil Wurz, President and CEO of the Pinehurst Southern Pines Aberdeen Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. We're here at the U.S. Open doing some broadcasts that we'll be posting throughout the summer, and we're joined right now by Liguori. And if you don't know Liguori, you haven't consumed any media for about 20, 30 years because she is everywhere. Great interviewer, sportscaster. You've done it all, Ann, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here in Paradise in the Pines.
Oh, well, thanks so much, Phil. What a pleasure to be with you here at Pinehurst, and a wonderful week, and thanks for having me on the show.
You've covered 26 Masters, major events, not just golf, but tennis. I mean, you name it. You've done it all. How special are these major championships, and especially one here in Pinehurst?
Right, I know. I started when I was 12, right? They're very, very special. You know, I was the first woman to host a show on WFAN
New
back
York,
in 1987 and did Hey Liguori, What's the Story for 25 years. And I always had a passion for golf. I didn't play the game until I was, on the Golf Channel in the early days, which is interesting. I did every other sport, but I became their golf correspondent. And I started covering all the major championships for the fan.
Yeah.
And it's very, very special. Obviously, the U.S. Open, now this is an anchor site here at Pinehurst, which is a great idea. And it's always fun to come here as an amateur player, but then to come to see it transform into a U.S. Open venue is just extraordinary. So I just love what they do here. I love how, number 2 is just so tough.
Yeah.
I played it a couple of years ago, and boy, it's good to play it when you report on golf and host, I host Talking Golf now on WFAN on Sundays from 8 to 9 Eastern. And I love to play the course before I actually talk about it.
Yeah.
It's been a couple years, but boy, those greens are just brutal.
They are, especially during a U.S. Open.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see, how the strategy involved with these guys this week.
The playing Pinehurst number 2, I tell people when they come to the destination, it's like, hey, should I play number 2? Well, if you've never played it, I say you should play it because it's a U.S. Open course, and the way the resort markets it's U.S. Open ready every day. So there's no rough. They have to grow up for a U.S. Open, things like that. It's really U.S. Open ready every day. I tell people you got to at least play 2 once. But then there's some of the other golf courses here at Pinehurst, and now adding Pinehurst number 10. It's really, we call it the home of American golf. They call it the cradle of American golf. I mean, we truly believe this is the epicenter. This is the St. Andrews of the United States.
It really is. And, playing number 2 is very, very tricky. So I think, as you say, you should play it just to play it. Yeah. But I love number 4.
Yeah.
8. I remember years ago when I was here for the very first U.S. Open here at Pinehurst, Robert Dedman Sr. was my host. And walking around with him, it was like being with Moses as he parted the Red Sea, right? And he goes, why don't you just let's go play, number 8 or whichever course it was. And it was while the Open was going on. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm with the right person here. It was a lot of fun to experience it with him back in 99.
Yeah, that was a Centennial course back then, they called it.
That's right. And then just, really reporting on that magical U.S. Open win by Payne Stewart. It was very, very special, and he and Phil Mickelson duking it out toward the end there. Yeah. And then months later, I was in Lanai, the island in Hawaii, with a lot of PGA Tour professionals who knew Payne Stewart when the plane went away, right? And it was just so tragic. So to have that kind of ending a couple months after that magical finish by Payne Stewart, and then at the World Hall of Fame, the Monday of U.S. Open week, his family was here, and they did a special tribute to Payne Stewart. So to have been there as a reporter and a talk show host back then, it was just a very, very magical ending for Payne Stewart and in golf history, really.
Absolutely. And, his statue typically is behind the 18th green where it's resided for decades. They moved it for the first time ever for the U.S. Open because where it was originally located, it's basically suite holders, so not all the 250,000 fans are going to walk through these gates for the U.S. Open would see it. So it's at the entrance coming off the harness track on the south end of the property. So everybody gets to see that, and seeing people there 30 deep, taking,
Right.
trying to take a picture with Payne Stewart. The legacy lives on.
That's right. That pose, right? I
Yeah.
saw pictures all over social media of people coming here and taking that pose. It must have been something to move that trophy, right?
Yeah. It was interesting because the resort we knew about it a little bit ahead of time, but I came here on a Sunday when all these engineers were all over trying to figure it out because they'd never had moved it before, but they also had a chance to refurbish it, which I guess I understand you have to do that every 10
Sure.
years or so. So it got a little, refurbishment, so when they put it back in its original spot after the U.S. Open, it'll be bright and shiny, and it is by far the most photographed thing in this destination. Let's talk a little bit about your career. I mean, you talk about WFAN starting in 1987. Back in that time, I mean, now we see so many ladies on TV. I think of, Kira Dixon, who's here for Golf Channel now, and Holly Rowe with ESPN. How tough was it getting, as a female in that industry? I mean, there were some there, but I mean, in the sports industry, to get the respect and earn the respect that you did over the years.
Well, there weren't women hosting sports talk radio anywhere.
Yeah.
And WFAN was the first all-sports radio station in the country. And so when I was named host of, Hey Liguori, What's the Story, back July 4th, 1987, I really knew that not only would I have to be almost flawless as a sports talk show host back then, as all eyes were
you're
watching
under the microscope,
and listening,
for
under
sure.
the microscope. Wow,
Yeah.
what's that woman doing? There were a lot of traditional mentalities out there that felt that women shouldn't really be hosting sports shows. What do they know about
In New
sports?
York,
In the
you've got
number
a
one
lot
market.
of the biggest critics in the world.
Exactly. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to really know my stuff. I had to know everything.
Yeah.
Yankees, Mets, Jets, Giants, all the hockey teams. There's so much sports going on in the New York metropolitan area and beyond. And so I really worked so hard to watch every game, to do my research. And, back then, that was way before cell phones and Google,
Yeah,
when you could
yeah.
just get on your laptop and Google research on any personality. I would read 5-6 papers a day and have files on every personality that I thought I would eventually interview.
Yeah.
Whether it was Mickey Mantle back in the day when I was in my 20s and he was older, or Derek Jeter, or whomever it was. I mean, it spanned, the show aired for 25 years,
Yeah.
so it spanned a couple of decades, and it was tough because I knew if I didn't do well, I'd not only maybe ruin chances for my future as a woman in sports media, but perhaps maybe ruin the
people that
chances for
followed.
other women.
Yeah.
And so I established my credibility very quickly, and the New York fans are passionate, and I was well received, and the phone calls were great, and the reviews were terrific. So I worked really hard for it, but now it's a lot different. But
Yeah.
I think we did open some doors for women for sure.
You mentioned how earning the respect of your colleagues and also, other females that might follow in your footsteps, but you guarantee you brought more lady fans into the fold, because ones that maybe felt intimidated by, men's sports or any sports at all, I'm sure a lot more women follow sports now.
I mean, I tried to talk as much women's sports as I could, but, it was really a predominantly male station. We did
Yeah.
have a lot of women. I don't want to say a lot, but we did. I had a regular woman caller, Doris from Rego Park. She called every week for 25 years, and she became so famous they wrote about her in the New York Times.
That's great.
But, I mean, we had, I tried to really, as the only woman female host on that station. Now, Susan Waldman started on that station. She was the first voice heard, and she was an update anchor at that time. And then she went on to
With the Yankees.
and she's still going
Yeah.
strong with the Yankees. And I'm so proud of Susan Waldman because we're both originals at WFAN. But
And John Sterling has since
he is retired.
stepped aside.
Right. But it's just such an honor and privilege to be one of the originals at the first all sports radio station. And to this day, I'm still on the airwaves. I host Talking Golf on Sunday mornings. And, it's just, if I had a dime for everybody who said, all sports radio? Are you kidding me? That's never going to work.
Right.
And, since then, 1987, there's thousands of radio
Absolutely.
stations, all sports radio stations across the country. And my very first interview, Phil, was Doc Gooden. He had just come out of Smithers Rehab, and he was the hottest story in New York, and everybody was trying to get the interview. And WFAN wasn't even on the air yet. And I went up to him in the locker room, his first game back to Shea Stadium, and I just went right up to him, and I said, "Hey, I'm Ann Liguori." He knew me because I had covered the Mets for ABC Radio Network before WFAN even started. And I told him about FAN, first all-sports radio station. It's going to start next week. Will you be my first guest?
Wow.
And he said, "Sure." So then and believe me, the PR director at the time was mortified because I went around him.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Because he would never have granted, he didn't want anybody to really talk to Doc at that point. But I knew I had to get the biggest guest in town.
Yeah.
And so I just went up to him himself, and he said, absolutely. And then I knew I had to move him out of the Mets locker room because otherwise all these other reporters would put their microphones up. Yeah. So I said, Doc, can you come to the Jets locker room with me, which they shared stadiums way back when? And he goes, sure. So we walked over, we kind of meandered through all the reporters and went to the Jets locker room and had the interview, and it made all the newspapers. It was my very first guest on July 4th, 1987.
Very cool.
It was July 4th, so we started the show off with a bang, so to speak.
No doubt.
Fireworks.
awesome get there, and the Mets were the defending World Series champions at the time.
That's right.
Then you made your way to Golf Channel. Talk about how you got discovered to go work for Mr. Palmer.
Well, Michael Whalen was a genius of a programmer at the Golf Channel, and I had done statistician work for HBO Sports where Michael was before he was recruited to program and do all kinds of production work for the Golf Channel. And so Michael Whalen knew about my work, and I'd done Wimbledon with them. I'd done the U.S. Open Tennis Championships. I'd done some boxing fights. And he called me on. He was in Orlando already. I was in New York City, and he said, hey, there's this new 24/7 niche cable channel that's going to start, Golf Channel. Would you like to host a show for us?
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely. And literally in 5 minutes, we came up with the show because I asked Michael, I said, well, what shows are you already doing?
Yeah.
What are you programming so far? And most of the shows were about the professional golfers. And I thought, hey, why don't I interview celebrities in Hollywood, music, business, politics, whomever, who aren't professional golfers, who have a passion for golf.
Yeah.
He loved the idea. Of course, I promised him I would book all the A-list personalities, so I had a lot of pressure.
Course.
I had a lot of I had to fulfill that.
Yeah.
But Conversations with Ann Liguori was born, and we had an incredible guest list. I got Celine Dion, Matthew McConaughey, Samuel L. Jackson, Joe Pesci, Kevin Costner, Stallone, Amy Grant, Ann Murray, who was just at the World Golf Hall of Fame presenting the induction to Sandra Palmer. So it was a wonderful run. I was on prime time for 5 years. It was early in the Golf Channel's inception. We were on the first Wednesday that the Golf Channel went on the air. And to be a part of two startups, WFAN and the Golf Channel, is very historic, and it was so fulfilling, and also to work right alongside Arnold Palmer as one of the founders of the Golf Channel was a thrill.
Very cool. You mentioned the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which was the Monday of the U.S. Open week. You mentioned Sandra Palmer was inducted, but also the founding ladies of the LPGA Tour. I actually sat next to a lady in that, and she knew some of those ladies, and she was very emotional about that. How much did it mean to you to see those ladies inducted? And we'll talk about Peggy Kurt-Bell in a minute because she has obviously a history here. But how much did it mean to see those ladies inducted and recognized for what they did, the groundbreaking work that they did for the ladies today, like
the
Nelly
13 founding members, long overdue. Really, we're just so thrilled that they recognized them this year. Much deserved. Without those 13 founding members, the LPGA wouldn't exist. I mean, these women not only organized the tournaments, they promoted the tournaments, they brought in whatever prize money they could. They
didn't make
kept
much.
The scores. They played. They had to play, obviously.
Yeah.
They just did everything to organize these tournaments, and I'm so glad that young people can be educated about these founding women, because I kind of feel like in my business as one of the early women to do a sports talk show on radio, and there's so many women in sports media now who have all these opportunities, and I'm not sure that they're very educated on maybe the women before them. That they figured, we've always had these opportunities, and I just take it so seriously that we had to do, as I mentioned before, we had to almost be flawless, really, to exceed everybody's expectations, right? And I just am so grateful that the USGA is recognizing these founding members, because I just think it's such a great education for young people to know how it all got started and to appreciate those who were before them.
And we see, Nelly Korda is dominating the LPGA Tour. Lydia Ko had for a while, and it's become more of the mainstream now. They're getting a lot of the coverage. Their purses. Michael Wan, the USJ, did a great job of really kind of matching what the men are making. I think here at the U.S. Women's Open a couple years ago, it was the largest purse they ever had, and I think they're going to reveal that during the U.S. Open week for the Women's Open.
Michelle Weo was here for that win. It was right after the week after the U.S. Open, the U.S. Women's Open, followed that here at Pinehurst. Yeah, so it's been great to follow the women as well, and I give them as much support on my Talking Golf show as I can.
It's really cool here at the U.S. Open. Michael McGowan, who people don't know his father is Pat McGowan, granddaughter or grandson of Peggy Kirk Bell. So, Michael, born and raised in Southern Pines, played Pinehurst No. 2, first PGA Tour event after 9 years toiling on mini tours to make his debut at the U.S. Open. I mean, how an incredible stage. And I asked him, what would Mammers have said? That's what they called Peggy. And she said she would have said, go win it. And he truly believes he can do it. But Peggy Kirk Bell, I mean, she's a legend around these parts, that's for sure.
I just regret I haven't interviewed Peggy. Everybody says, who, of all the people you've talked with, all the sports legends, who would you have enjoyed interviewing? And, you look at the founding members, and I'm like, wow, obviously, Babe Zaharias.
Yeah.
And then two babes, Babe Ruth, obviously, not that, I would have enjoyed interviewing him, but you read about the lore and their personalities, and I would have loved to interview the two babes, and certainly all the founding members of the LPGA. They would have been great interviews, right, to kind of capture that history.
You've got a book, just came out in February, Life on the Green, Lessons and Wisdom from Legends of Golf. That's the book. You said you gave me your last one here at the U.S. Open. I'm sure you can go to Amazon and pick it up.
You can.
We'd love to have you come back to the area in Southern Pines, the Country Bookstore, the Weymouth Center, and sign those books. But talk about the book and what it's all about.
Sure, Phil. Thanks for asking about it. Life on the Green, Lessons and Wisdom from Legends of Golf. Jim Nance writing the foreword. We just saw Jim this week. He's such a gracious, incredible person. Hatherley Press asked me to write a golf book. I could have written a book about all these other legends that I've interviewed, the stories behind Mickey Mantle or Ted Williams or Hank Aaron or Will Chamberlain, but they wanted a golf book, and I said, sure, I've been covering golf for 30 years. I can do a golf book. So I came up with the idea of interviewing 12 legends, 6 men and 6 women, and I wanted them to be role models. I wanted them to obviously have a lot to say, a lot of wisdom. So they're a little older, and I came up with, Jack Nicklaus, Ben Crenshaw, Tom Watson, Padre Carrington, who just got inducted, Gary Player, Bernard Longer, and then, Nancy Lopez, Annika Sorenstam, Amy Alcott, Dottie Pepper, Renee Powell, and who am I missing? Nancy Lopez.
I think you named them all.
And Nancy Lopez, who was here as well. And it's really all about what they learned from their iconic golf careers that they use in their day-to-day life. So it's about life wisdom. They all tell incredibly in-depth stories about their lives and just so many great stories. But it's really more about life wisdom. I wanted it to be very positive. A lot of divisiveness in our society today and in our sport, unfortunately, right? But I didn't want to talk about any negativity. I wanted it to be uplifting, very motivational, so that men and women, young and old, you don't even have to be a diehard golfer to enjoy the book because the themes are universal. For instance,
golf mimics life in many cases.
That's exactly it. It's such
life lessons.
You learn so much about yourself when you play golf, and it's a microcosm of society and of life. So Gary Player, 88 years young, talks about pursue your passion. So it's really advice, life wisdom to everybody. Pursue your passion. You're going to work 24/7, right? You might as well do what you love to do. And who better than Gary Player to talk about that, right? He's still playing golf at his age. He's
still doing push-ups.
Still working out. I did push-ups and sit-ups with him in his living room a couple years ago for a TV show. And then you have somebody like, Jack Nicklaus, who talks about putting family first, and he and Barbara are really the first family of golf, and they've done such a great job in raising their family and keeping their priorities. Jack would fly back to Florida after the third round from wherever he was to attend his son's football game or baseball game back in the day, and then he'd fly back to the tournament and even win it on the final day. So he really prioritized his family, and I think that's a very important message in today's world. And he talks about integrity and sportsmanship and Nancy Lopez talks about positivity, and on and off the course. As you know, as a golfer, you're only as good as your last good shot, right? And
Exactly.
it's so difficult to stay positive.
Yeah.
Look at the guys out here. They have to forget the last shot and
I was
stay
going
in
to
the
say, because
present.
sometimes in life things don't go right, and you just got to kind of compartmentalize it and
Yeah, her
set it aside.
message is so crucial, and especially off the course. You may have a bad day at the office, or something may be going, astray in your personal life. You have to stay positive and stay in the present. And if you stay positive, it really can change your life. If you think about it, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to stay positive all the time, but if you can do it, you'll change your life.
I'm sure 12 different people, 12 different
Things,
philosophies on
yes.
life, but what is the one thread that maybe they all share for their success in life?
I think they all had to overcome challenges, all of them. And, they don't all have, they weren't born with silver spoons in their mouth. They all, a lot of them came from very poor backgrounds. I mean, Bernard Longer, he revealed that he wasn't even supposed to be around. The doctor told his mother not to have the baby.
Yeah.
And so he feels he's a miracle just being here.
Huh.
And he talks about how very poor he was growing up, and his brother got a caddy job. And so at the age of 5 or 6, he brought Bernard to the golf course so that Bernard could caddy as well.
Yeah.
And he just had this special knack of reading the greens and ingratiating himself to the members of this golf club.
Yeah.
And he started bringing home money, which was a huge revelation, right? And because he would help his mother worked as a waitress in a diner, and he also said if he was friendly to people and happy, he'd get more tips. So he learned very early how to earn money to help feed the family. And then he became a pro very, very young at the age of 15. And he got a sponsor early in his career to help with his expenses. And so he started winning early in his career. And I don't know if it was just out of desperation, probably. But you look at somebody like Bernard Longer, who's, 67 now, and you wonder, how does he develop the hunger that he has now to continue to train, put in all those hours training on and off the golf course, travel, winning, competing.
Dominates on the Champions Tour.
Exactly. He's the winningest player on the PGA Tour Champions. And you have to, when you learn more about their backgrounds and their childhood, it kind of all comes together like, maybe that's why he's just so determined and such a fierce competitor and always hungry.
Let's ask about your success before we say goodbye. Young lady wants to get into the business, highly competitive, even more so than probably when you got started. What would be your best education or advice to a young lady trying to get into journalism and do what you do?
I think knowledge is very important. You really have to know your subject and do research and put in the time. Work harder than the next person and be professional. I think professionalism and developing integrity and credibility, those are such important aspects of, and early in your career, because you don't want to do anything, that you're going to regret years later. I think as you build one's career, you have to really start very early and put the work in. Work ethic is huge, and that was another theme that I think all the legends in Life on the Green talked about. Work ethic is huge. There's no shortcuts to success.
Yeah.
Annika Sorenstam was telling the story of being on the range in Sweden, and it started to pour when she was 15 years old. She, started raining very hard. She called her father, "Hey, Dad, come pick me up." And he came and picked her up, and they were driving away, and he looked on the range. All the other junior players were still out there practicing in a downpour, right? And he looked over to Annika, and he said, "Annika, there are no shortcuts to success." And she said, my heart just sunk. Here my dad is telling me that. She said, I'll never forget that moment. And from that point on, she went out there, and she, obviously Annika, with all the wins,
is history,
the rest,
as
as they say, is history. And her work ethic has been just incredible. So I can't stress that enough. I think work ethic, nothing's going to be handed to you.
Yeah.
And stay positive, because you're going to have a lot of dips, a lot of ups and downs. And you have to really, it's those who know how to handle the downs that will really succeed.
Well, and Liguori, it's been a pleasure, an honor, really, to have you here on Paradise in the Pines. Thank you for taking time out here at the U.S. Open. Hopefully we have a great champion, but this is the book. It's Life on the Green, Lessons and Wisdom from Legends of Golf by Ann Liguori. I have the last copy here at the U.S. Open, but you can go to Amazon and get it, and hopefully we get back here in the Sandhills and do a book signing. Best of luck with the rest of the U.S. Open, your career, and I'm sure we'll see you again real soon.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
It's a thrill to be with you, Phil, really.
Thank you.
So.
Well, if you want to learn more about tourism in this destination known as the home of American golf, go to our website, homeofgolf.com. To see more of our videos, go to our YouTube channel, Home of American Golf. If you like this podcast, it's called Paradise in the Pines. Search for it, download it, share it with your friends. We'll see you next time.
Boy, let me find this for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a pen.
Get in the shade here.